You can reverse every single disease out there. Somewhere between 5% to 20% of who you are and what you become is genetic. 80 to 95% is the lifestyle and environment you put your body in, because your genes or your tissues swim in the solution of you.
How do you start, I guess, taking your health seriously? Like, where does it begin for people to say, you know what, I do want to feel better?
So in an ideal world, everyone would.
What's up, Well Butters? Today, I got myself a major health expert on the show. This guy owns the biggest virtual functional medicine company in the world. He has been a doctor for lots of different entrepreneurs. They have so much data across the world right now in terms of what are the highest states with pesticides, what are the highest states with this problem, and they're using all of this data to create some really cool things. He's also a podcaster, got one of the top shows in the health space. I've got Steven Cabral. What's up, man?
How's it going? It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming out to Vegas. Where do you call home?
Well, I called home Boston for about 20 years, and then I just moved down to West Palm Beach, Florida area.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so just about a year and a half ago.
Oh, nice. I actually lived in the Cape Cod for a couple of years.
Oh, you did? Where in
I
the
was
Cape?
playing baseball. Well, technically outside the Cape, Wareham.
Yeah,
yeah.
Cape Cod Leaks, that's great.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it out there in the summer anyway.
For sure. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, dude, you run a big time clinic. Like, what does even being the biggest mean?
So I had a practice in Boston from about 2000 or so to 2019. And we were doing body transformation. We were doing nutrition in depth. Like back in the day, before there was paleo, before there was any of those things, we were helping people, celebrities, whoever it might be from out of town, transforming their bodies, and of course, everyday people. And then we moved into now functional medicine. So about 10 years, just transformation. I started as a nutritionist, personal trainer, went back to school, got my doctorate degree in naturopathy because I've got my own story with health that I'm happy to share. But after that, we started to bring integrative health and personalized medicine to Boston. And so we saw 250,000+ people before we even started to move online.
So what is naturopathy?
Naturopathy, you study the same topics, whether it's physiology, anatomy, oncology, toxicology. But the last 2 years of school, you're not using pharmaceuticals or learning about pharmaceuticals. You're using natural interventions. So it could be herbs, it could be vitamins, minerals, omegas, nutrition, exercise, all of the things non-pharmacological based. That's what we do.
And is that what we would call functional medicine today?
Functional medicine. So postdoctoral degree, I studied and we went into functional medicine. It's basically after your degree. Now it's a part of naturopathy school. So they actually make it a part of that, where you start to learn about labs that are not just blood work based. Because although running your blood work, you should do that ideally every 6 months. So you can catch a disease state as early as possible. But the problem is that your blood is called with a homeostatic fluid. That means that it's always balanced all the time until something really bad happens. And so ideally, you're looking at gut health, you're looking at your omegas, omega-6 to omega-3, so inflammation versus non-anti-inflammatory fats, vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, depending on what your diet looks like. I've seen even the best diets, you typically have 1 or 2 deficiencies. So if you find those, the likelihood that something's wrong with your blood work is just so much slimmer.
Right.
And so that's what we work on. And then of course, the entire lifestyle-based process.
So if you had to define functional medicine, because you hear about it a lot, like what would be like the one sentence answer?
Functional medicine is using your blood work and or at-home lab testing that we can get into, and then personalizing your lifestyle based on that. So not just a pill for every ill. So conventional medicine is you go in, and again, this is probably for 90+% of the population. You go in, you have high cholesterol, you get a statin drug, right? Or you go in, you have type 2 diabetes, you're put on insulin. Or if you have high blood pressure, you're put on a beta blocker or a calcium channel blocker or diuretic. So that's conventional medicine. You come in with X and you get this prescription. With functional medicine, you come in and you say, what would be the underlying root cause be of why someone has high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, blood pressure? Because all of these have an underlying root cause that can be fixed. So you can reverse every single disease out there.
But why would you say that 90% of people, are going to fit the conventional medicine method? Is it just because they don't know any better and they're lazy? Or is it like, no, that's truly what they need. Functional won't work for them.
That's a great question. No, functional will work for them. They haven't been taught, like I wasn't taught when I was a teenager. When I got sick, we didn't know any better. So you go to your PCP and whatever they tell you, that's Bible, right? But then there's a lot of other people that aren't interested in improving their diet. They're not interested in doing sauna or getting in
I get it.
10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
And so for those people, should they have blood pressure of 190 over 135 and they could have a stroke at any minute? No, they probably should then get medication for that. But in my opinion, and it's not even my opinion, if you're on blood pressure medication, you're never coming off of it, right? Because that's what's keeping your blood pressure lower. And the problem is that you never found the root cause of what was causing the high blood pressure, which means that it's going to find another outlet: high cholesterol, diabetes, autoimmune issues.
So it's really, it's kind of what I said in that they're just lazy. They don't really want to put in the work that's necessary to make a lifestyle change.
A lot of people are overwhelmed, they're overstressed, and that's just one more thing for them to think about. Yeah, they're just not interested.
But they don't realize the root cause is, had they fixed this thing, they wouldn't be feeling that.
And that's the truth, because I actually never knew how much natural energy I could have, how much, clarity of thinking I could have until really my early 30s.
Yeah.
So I was sick from 17 years old to 27 years old. I had Addison's disease, which is the inability to produce cortisol. So inability to produce cortisol, you might say, well, cortisol is inflammatory. It's not good for you, breaks down the body. But if you don't produce it, you don't wake up. You're a walking zombie. You have flu-like symptoms all the time. And then it caused type 2 diabetes because I couldn't regulate blood sugar.
Wow.
And then I also had autoimmune issues like rheumatoid arthritis. So I was a mess for a decade. Now, this was in the mid 90s to early 2000s, kind of pre-internet, at least in the mid 90s. So I just had to read and try to figure things out and go to practitioners. And ultimately, I met my mentor, who actually combined functional medicine with naturopathy, which is a little bit different. It's not just using blood work, but looking at your, let's say, salivary hormone levels, gut testing. That was really important for me because I had all sorts of digestive issues. And then within 6 months, 10 years of sickness, within 6 months, completely better. But even when I was better, and I felt amazing, don't get me wrong, years later, and even today, I'm in my mid 40s, later 40s now, I feel better than I ever have.
Wow.
And that's, I think, what people miss is they don't understand how good they can feel, because if they did know, they would work towards it.
Right.
They ultimately would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll say, even for myself and my wife, we've been taking our health a lot more seriously the last couple of years. And both of us, learning new things about ourselves, are starting to feel better than we've ever felt, even though we're getting older.
Yeah.
And like for my wife, it was a gluten allergy she didn't know she had. And not eating gluten has really changed her. But she still has sleep problems. And so we're trying to figure out the root cause of why that is. I think having a 6-month-old might have to do with that. But even before that, she's always had sleeping problems.
For sure.
And then for me, I never had a blood test until recently. And, then I started to see, oh, you got low T, you got this, you got that. And so, I start fixing the root cause and doing different things. And then now I'm freaking feeling better than ever.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
That's how it should be as well.
Yeah. So here's my thing. I resonate with what you're saying now, because I've had a lot of health experts on, but I never truly understood what you guys were saying until I just heard what you said of that. For most people, 90% will look at their problem and they want the easy solution. Just give me the drug. That will fix the problem. And I'll be on it the rest of my life. And it's still not going to be great, because they're still probably overweight and dealing with the crap that they got to deal with. It's just managing the problem.
That's what it is. Managing the disease is a good way to put it.
Yeah. And then you're saying, well, dude, you wouldn't have this if you actually just did XYZ. Now, doing XYZ is not easy. This is where the functional side comes in. Let's work out. Let's be healthy. Let's sleep better. Let's have these vitamins. Let's eat right. All of these things end up fixing that. So you don't even need to manage the pain or whatever, because it's not there. You just don't have it. So it's interesting to me. And then even as a guy of faith, I take it one step further, because, I see people who are in this functional stage, like lots of entrepreneurs. We're like, yo, I can fix this. Let's go. I'm going to go make money. I'm going to go have this. And then they still deal with problems like anxiety and stress and depression and unfulfillment and all these things. And then for me, to take the root cause even further, I'm like, it's faith. It always comes back down to faith. If you don't have a purpose, if you don't have faith, if you don't know where you're going, well, yeah, I don't care how healthy you are, you're going to feel those ways.
So your psychology absolutely affects your physiology.
Yeah.
And your physiology affects your psychology. So I didn't know why I had anxiety and all these issues when I was a teenager. But I had Candida overgrowth, which is a yeast overgrowth in your gut. And I had taken antibiotics for 3 years for acne. So in my family, people are prone to acne. From 14 years old to 17 years old, the dermatologist put me on amoxicillin, which is a broad spectrum antibiotic.
Yeah.
Okay, so it kills the bacteria, certainly helps with acne for some individuals, but the problem is it also destroys your gut bacteria. And 80% of your immune system lives in and around your intestines. You have about 26 feet of intestines. So what happened is I had no front line of defense left. So when I eventually got sick at 17, my home immune system was shut down. My lymph nodes were swollen. I was an absolute mess. And I had to rebuild my gut with SIBO, which is called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I had H. pylori, which is a bacterial infection. And so you have something called the enteric nervous system, which is a nervous system around your intestines. And it communicates to your brain through the vagus nerve. And so my gut was a mess. And so I was in a state of anxiety, a state of like worry, all of these things. And yes, I was a senior in high school. There's certainly a lot of things to be worried about, but it hit me almost all of a sudden. And so what I've realized is that for people with the anxiety, with the worry, I agree with you about faith, about purpose, about passion, about growth, not understanding that, oh, you're going to make it, right? There is no making it. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like, okay, well, what's the next level? And that you were meant for maybe so much more, your potential. But if your health is off, you can try to fight through it like a lot of entrepreneurs do. But it literally could be neurotransmitter imbalances, lack of B vitamins, gut health issues that are at least partially responsible for overflowing that rain barrel and causing a lot of the worry.
Wealth builders, you might have recently heard that we launched Wealthy University, which has access to all of our courses. You get weekly calls with me and our team. You also get access to special trainings, many of which have been done by people who are on this podcast, as well as recordings of WealthCon and other workshops and events that we've done. But even though that was good, I actually want to make it risk-free for you to try for yourself. I'm giving all of the podcast listeners a 14-day free trial by simply going to wealthyuniversity.com/podcast. So if you go check out that link, you'll be able to get access to your 14-day free trial right now. You'll be able to go check out the course. You'll be able to go check out calls, trainings, and everything else, and then see if it's a fit for you. There's literally no risk to doing it. So go to wealthyuniversity.com/podcast and go get your free 14-day trial of Wealthy University today. Yeah. No, 100%. So, let's just talk about this, right? I could talk about faith all day as the core that leads to the rest of these things happening. Even when it's like, God tells us our body's a temple, right? Like, take care of it. Yes. And then all of us just, well, not all of us, but the 90% don't treat it as such. They treat it as like, whatever. It is what it is. Like, I don't really care too much. I just want to have fun. How do you start, I guess, taking your health seriously? Like, where does it begin for people to say, you know what? I do want to feel better. I don't want to keep going down this path that I can see is not going to be good. Where do you first start with people?
So in an ideal world, everyone would run their blood work with their PCP or an outside. There's so many outside agencies that you can just run your own blood work. But what that looks at is essentially your complete blood count, your cholesterol, your overall numbers. And most people's numbers are going to be okay. So what we want to look at is really what's called functional medicine at-home lab testing. We're going to look at your gut health through something called the Candida metabolic and vitamins test. You don't need to write all this stuff down, but your omega-6 to omega-3 levels for inflammation, your minerals and metals, which is looking at heavy metals that we can get into, which is mercury levels, aluminum, lead, cadmium, arsenic that can be causing inflammation in your body, and vitamins and mineral levels. So what we do is we want to personalize a program for every single person in the world. And our job is, yes, we did it for 20 years basically in our Boston practice, but we said, how can we open this up to the world? Because it's not being done right now. So painstakingly over the years, we figured out how to ship labs to all 50 states, how to ship labs all the way over to Australia. And so we ship at-home labs, which is basically urine sample, hair sample, saliva sample, finger prick, just like you're taking your blood sugar. Yeah. And you can actually find your vitamin D levels that way, your thyroid levels that way. So every compartment of the body, whether it's saliva or hair, has its own way and own specialty for testing. And so we're kind of agnostic in terms of what lab is best. We use the best labs in the world. And then we customize a program for you. So you may need a little bit more, let's say, methylcobalamin like B12, or you might need more vitamin C because you have an active lifestyle. You need more antioxidants, or maybe just a little bit more omega-3s because you eat a little bit more meat, not as much fish. And so we just customize that for each individual rather than saying maybe give paleo a shot, keto a shot, carnivore a shot. It's saying, well, I don't know exactly what Ryan needs, but if we run these labs, I can tell you exactly what you need. And then we do a two process. So we do a removal process and we do a replenishment process. So by the time you get into your 30s, for sure, there is toxicities in the body. So it could be heavy metals, it could be glyphosate, it could be all sorts of different things that your body accumulates. We want to remove those because those create inflammation. And inflammation then will trigger whatever the weak parts in your body, your genetics, right? But the genetics, they're always there, but they don't need to express themselves. So for example, I had type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. That's in my genes. All four of my grandparents had rheumatoid arthritis. Both my parents had rheumatoid arthritis. They got theirs in their 40s and 50s. I got mine at 17.
Wow.
But now I'm in my 40s. I no longer have rheumatoid arthritis. Still in my genes, but it's the expression of those genes that matters. So those genes are no longer expressing for autoimmune issues.
How does a gene stop expressing that if it's still there?
It's the environment and what it's put in. So there is what's called epigenetics. So the genetics means this is your genotype, but then it's what you become is your phenotype, right? So think about this. Like the best way to look at it is body transformation. Let's say you had a twin. They have actually done this called the Danish twin study. And so they found that somewhere between 5% to 20% of who you are and what you become is genetic. 80 to 95% is the lifestyle and environment you put your body in.
Wow.
Because your genes or your tissues swim in the solution of you. And that is what allows them to express themselves. So let's say you didn't exercise, you didn't work out. You would most likely have 15 to 20 pounds less muscle on you right now.
Yeah.
You probably have 15 to 20 pounds more body fat on you right now. This is the expression of your genes, your genetics. And that's very important. We can't control our height, but we can control a lot of parts of who we are and what we are.
Yeah, anyone can get jacked, like essentially, right?
To their genetic potential, but then they can also say, well, so for example, I'm 5'8", I'm usually around 165 to 170. This is just me living a normal lifestyle, weight training 3 days a week, doing my cardio, like trying to stay balanced. But I've been 5'8", 200 pounds.
Yeah.
So when I was in my early 20s, I said, my main goal right now is to get to 200 pounds, a lot of muscle, relatively low body fat. And I ate 200 to 250 grams of protein per day. I weight trained 4 times a week. I had a specific, split. Like I had all the things to make my body do that. Now, genetically, am I more prone to being 200? No, I had a fight to get there, but you can make it happen.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that because for me, I was a pro athlete. So it's like, I've seen genetic freaks and I'm like, all right, dude, there ain't no way I could ever do that.
Yes.
And I feel like I maxed out pretty much my genetics as best I could. I'm like, now I'm about 190, but I'm on peptides and TRT. So I kind of count it as not truly my but maybe you disagree. But like back in the day when I was playing, I was about 180 the entire time, never really fluctuated. And that was like my comfortable weight and whatever. Could I get to 190? Sure. But I would have been like fatter. I would have been like, it would have been really hard to put on that much muscle.
Yeah.
I've never been 200, so like even then, my genetics just did not really want me to do that. Even as much as I might try, like I try to eat and my just like insides feel terrible and sluggish. And I'm like, it ain't even worth it trying to get that big just because I can feel my body rejecting it.
Yeah, it would hurt your performance for sure. Like you probably would have been more stiff, tighter. You'd have a lot more inflammation from all the food you were trying to get in your body. When I got to 200 pounds, I'm not saying I was healthy. Like for sure I was not, but I transformed the outside of my body. The inside would have been a very different scenario had I done a lot of lab testing to actually see what was going on. So, and then again, part of it is I have, in terms of producing testosterone, I produce a good amount of testosterone, but I also have some of the detriments of that, like what's called a transition to dihydrotestosterone. So it could lead to, so that's one of the big reasons why I had acne when I was a teenager, is that I produce a lot of testosterone, but also it converts to dihydrotestosterone, which could lead to hair loss and it could lead to acne. And those are like two of the predominant things, or prostate-based issues when you get older. And so it's always like everything's a blessing, but it can also be a curse. And so what you try to do is you just try to balance your uniqueness. And it doesn't take a lot, but you need to get to know you and then ultimately what keeps you healthy, what keeps you balanced. And I'll tell you, you know yourself by the time you're in your mid 20s to later 20s, you know which way your body leans.
Yeah.
And so if you always know that, then you're always kind of protecting your backside. Like, hey, this is where my body goes to. So like my body will go towards, burnout, and my mind always wants to go, but my body will become burnt out. And so I have to kind of protect myself against myself and do the things such as sleep. So I make sure that I get 8 to 8.5 hours of sleep a night. I also track my deep sleep and my REM sleep. And I track my heart rate variability to know that I'm recovering the next day. So this is what we do. So for someone, for your wife, this goes though for, let's say that you have rheumatoid arthritis, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, any of these things, whatever it is, autoimmune issues. There's ever only 6 to 12 things maximum that are wrong that would lead to that outcome. So for sleep, could be imbalanced levels of calcium to magnesium. Like that's a big reason right there. Okay. Another reason, you're producing too much cortisol even later into the day, not enough melatonin. Another one is not enough of what's called inhibitory neurotransmitters. So during the day, we have excitatory neurotransmitters, dopamine, and we've got norepinephrine. But then at night, we need a little bit more serotonin. We need a little bit more GABA, or the machine doesn't begin to slow down. And serotonin, the happy feel-good neurotransmitter, is why they put people on SSRIs to try to keep more serotonin in the body. It doesn't make more, but keep more between what's called the synapses, so it lets more in. You can't produce melatonin. So your body actually never calms down. I had the same issue, when I was younger. So there are a few more, but what we would do with someone like your wife is we would just look at, listen, there's a dozen things maximum. You don't have all of them. You might have 3 or 4. Let's fix the 3 or 4. Yeah. And sometimes it is just having a 6-month-old, Sometimes
but
it's
been her problem for a while. And it's not that she has a problem falling asleep. She's not a insomniac. She just does not. I bet you if we tracked her deep sleep, it'd just be terrible. She just does not recover or sleep well. She's a light sleeper.
Yes.
And everything. So I don't, that's our next stage, is figuring out that. But yeah, like what's interesting for me is I need to go get the Oura Ring again and see where my numbers are at now, because it's been a couple of years, but I don't sleep. So, and it's not that I choose not to. I just wake up like feeling fine. I sleep 6.5 hours.
It still matters though. Like I tell people, like, are you in your early 30s?
34. Yeah.
Okay, 34. So I was chatting earlier with one of the guys in your team, and I was telling him about what's called the disposable soma theory, or the triage theory. So when you look at anti-aging, which may not be as much of an interest to you maybe until you get like another 10 years, 15 years. Then you're like, oh yeah, this matters. Like I said, I want to stay healthy and stay young for decades from now. And so what we look at is there's a theory on aging called the disposable soma theory, or triage theory. What it means is that during your essentially main reproductive years, which is, let's call it 15 years old through 45 years old, you've got like this 30-year window. Your body is constantly breaking down on the back end, but it's keeping you strong and healthy on the front end to be able to repopulate this world. Like that's the main job of the human species, and keep you strong and healthy enough in order to be able to do with that. So you can go, you end up building up all these deficiencies, but you can go with less sleep. You can recover faster from workouts, all these things. And it becomes a little bit less and less. And it's different. Some people suffer from that at 35, some not until they're 55. Again, that kind of comes back to genetics and how well you're taking care of yourself. But what we look at is that over time, a lack of sleep catches up with you. So if you get less than 7 hours per night, I agree. Some people only need 7. It's between 7 and 9 hours. How do we know? Well, it depends on your deep sleep, your REM, how you're recovering. Yeah. And if it's less than 7, we like to work you back there, because we know over time it matters. Right now in your life, probably doesn't matter. You probably produce a lot of dopamine, a lot of norepinephrine. You're driven, you have purpose. Like you're waking up excited for the day. Yeah. Not everybody is. Right. But that can also burn you out, because when we look at it, there's catabolism, the amount of time your body is breaking down, and then anabolism, the amount of time your body is building up. Now you're compensating right now, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, with peptides and TRT. Yeah. So, but it's giving you potentially a false sense of vigor. Right. And strength, because you're putting that into your body. Yeah. Rather than you producing that naturally.
I'm sure you've heard by now that WealthCon is coming back to Las Vegas, April 18th to the 20th, here at the Caesars Palace. Now, here's the thing. Many people listening to this podcast have not been to WealthCon. Maybe you haven't found the time, maybe the logistics didn't work out, and you have no idea how amazing it is. Well, I'm going to actually give you something completely for free so you can get a taste of what we've got going on. I'm going to give you the recordings of our last WealthCon back in January for the 2 full-day experience. You're going to get access to all of the speakers and all of their presentations and everything else right now completely for free by going to wealthcon.org. Now, I don't know how long I keep this up on the website. It's a special thing that I'm trying out. I want to give people a ton of value, and I want to let you get a taste of what we're going to be doing in April. So go check it out, wealthcon.org. Go get the free recording, and maybe I'll see you at the next one. Yeah. And I just started doing it about 6 months ago, so it's new for me. But even still before that, I was really strong. Like I still, was lean, could lift a lot of weight, still felt fine. It's just, it kind of took me to a new level. I was like, oh, okay, this is different. I guess what I would say about the sleep thing is, when I was doing my Oura Ring, I would look at the stats, and it was weird because it would say because then even once they start tracking it, it's like even less, because I'm like, oh yeah, I went to bed at 10 and I woke up at 5. That was 7 hours. And then it's like, no, you really only slept 6. Right. And so it would consistently say around 6 hours of real sleep, but my deep sleep was still over 2 hours every night. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah. And everyone I talked to was like, well, that's very unusual that you would still get that much. But that was consistently the stat. And the REM was always really low.
So let's chat about that for a second. So deep sleep for most people is harder to get.
Yeah.
Let's think of it this way. Deep sleep is restorative for the body, and REM sleep is restorative for the brain. Deep sleep, it happens throughout the night, but the predominance is, let's say, 10 p.m. at night to 2 a.m. It's the first 4 hours or so that you're in bed. Now, you might not go to bed till midnight, so it's different for different individuals. And then REM sleep is going to be a little bit later in the night. That should be over 2 hours. Deep sleep should ideally be 90 minutes or more. And REM sleep is extremely important because they're finding that those people that get less REM sleep are more prone to then inflammation in the brain, dementia, potentially Alzheimer's. So what we want to look at is, Ryan, at 7 hours, you might be good because you're getting 90 plus minutes of deep and 2+ hours of REM. And so it takes a lot of people 8 hours to get that much, where you can get it in 7.
Yeah.
Now, there are some benefits to light sleep. They're just still showing, think about it. Your body is essentially a brilliant and beautiful machine. But if, let's say you've got the greatest car in the world, if you run it for 12 hours to 16 hours a day, you're still running that engine in that car, it's gonna you're putting more miles on it. So it's what I look for, especially with entrepreneurs, is can we find spots in the day that we bring down that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, that dopamine, so that we can just get a little restorative time, get into what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, and then we can ramp it back up. So in my practice, because I had a crazy practice for so many years and still do, it's just now online. It's just with people all over the world. So I always used to get in the office early, like 7 a.m. and I would work until about noon. And then I would take 1 hour and I would just walk. I would put on a comedy podcast or whatever and just try to switch to that parasympathetic. And then I would go back in my office and I would call it day 2. And then I would say, okay, now we're on. We're going to be looking at labs. We're going to be working with patients, wellness clients, and then flip it, home with family, my 2 young daughters, get good sleep, and do it again. Yeah. And so it's just about, can you flip that switch so that you don't burn out the organism?
Yeah. And like you said, they all come together, right? Like sleep is just one element, food's an element, workouts an element, stress and family and all that's they all play a role. And I think sometimes people think because they're really good or really bad at one thing, they're like, oh, well, man, the other stuff's not important because this. And it's like, no, they all just, it's just all this, holistic thing that's, basically an overall score of what you are.
That's a good way to look at it. And a lot of people double down at what they're good at or what they like.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the issue. So we have something, I wrote about this in my book called the de-stress protocol. So there's a lot of ways that you get unwell, but there's really only one way to get well. So you need to find out what went wrong. So that's kind of the lab testing, but then we call it the de-stress protocol. So diet, exercise, stress reduction, toxin removal, rest, emotional-based balance, we'll call that part of the faith, science-backed supplements, and then a success mindset. And that's also because we've seen people relapse. Why do you relapse? Well, part of that is also mindset. Like you can't go back to who you were before and hope to maintain who you are and want to be in the future or today.
Yeah.
And so what we say is you don't need to get an A in all 8 areas. Right. That's the nice part. You can get a B, and if you're a B, if you're 80% in all 8 areas, you're good.
Yeah.
Because we're never perfect. Like that's not possible. So you have young kids, there's going to be stress, right?
Yeah.
Like this is not going to be possible. You're not always going to be able to get great sleep. Okay. When you can't get great sleep, well, then don't cheat on your diet then that day.
Yeah.
Right. And the next day, like let's really dial in for those days.
Yeah.
Let's work. Like if I'm traveling and I'm on a flight and I'm around, I'm in airports all this last week, a lot of sick people. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to use more intermittent fasting. I'm going to use more of my immune-based supplements because I don't need to use them at high levels all the time, but I can when I know I'm going to be exposed to a greater, pathogen load.
Yeah. I had a guy, a trainer on recently, and he was like, yeah, we always do intermittent fasting on flights. And I was like, why? He's like, because your digestive system doesn't work as well on a plane. I was like, I had never heard that before. That's interesting.
Well, there is more radiation. There's definitely more of a stress on the body. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I fast typically on my flight days so that I don't have to worry about what am I going to eat at the airport.
Yeah.
So I'll bring food. Yeah. I mean, like I can do that, but I'm not going to, no matter what they serve, I'm still not going to eat it. It's airplane food.
He's
right?
like, I'm not going to eat anything on an airplane.
That's right.
And
then when I land, I immediately go for a walk, go to Whole Foods. I try to acclimate my body then to wherever I am.
Yeah, one thing he noticed too, he's like, Ryan, look at you right now. You like just moving all the time. And my wife just gets annoyed because it's just nonstop. Like I can't, like my body just does it. I can't control it. And he's like, I think, I forgot what he said, but it's like, you just are hyper active all the time. I don't know.
Well, so the nice thing is if you have a strong constitution, which, being an athlete, all of those things you probably do, your body can keep up with a lot of that stress, but constant movement does keep you oftentimes a sign of that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight. It doesn't mean that you're scared of anything, right?
Yeah.
It's not worry. It's that you're shot out of a cannon. You know what I'm saying? And so you're always in the go, you're always achieving. I work with a ton of everybody in my practice, like for private clients, is high performers. And so you're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then after this, we're going to do this. And so your body's like always revved.
Yeah.
It's like when you drive in a sports car, it might idle at a 2. It should be a 1, right? So we want to bring that down in order to then be able to turn it on, turn it off.
I think for me, now that we're talking about this, like I'm having a few epiphanies. One, I think obviously for this podcast, this is like a game for me, right? Like we're playing, right? Like I want to be mentally focused and sharp, and I'm not going to do that being idled down. I'm going to do it being like very attentive and like having good energy and just be thinking and like ready to just go.
Yes.
So I treat it like a game because this is showtime, So that's one thing I think about, because there are times I'm not like this all the time. Like when I go to bed, I'm done. Like I can turn my body off. And I actually learned that while I was playing sports, because I spent, 8 years of my life sleeping on buses.
Yes.
And so I had to learn how to sleep in any environment and rest. Because if I didn't get good rest, regardless of the environment, I was going to feel like crap the next day. And I had to go perform at a really high level against other guys who are physically, trying to go take your head off. So, when I think about like the deep sleep thing we were talking about, I'm like, well, it makes sense because I kind of trained myself my whole life to be able to do that. And kind of recover when you're not really supposed to recover. Because I remember seeing a thing about athletes before, and they were just talking about how bad athletes sleep because they're traveling from game to game. Their body just literally cannot recover. And you think about in baseball being the worst, you play 162 games in like 175 days.
It's unbelievable, the season. Yeah, it's
like your body will literally never recover.
Yeah.
And you just get used to it. And that's why for me, I'm just like, no, I feel great, dude. I sit here and talk to a camera. My body feels totally fine. I guess it also is perspective.
Well, that and we can track this. So probably the two best in the industry right now are Whoop and Oura Ring.
Yeah.
And what you could look at during the day is what's your resting heart rate. So right now, as we're chatting, maybe it's higher, maybe it's in the 80s. But typically when you're sitting at your desk or in meetings, is it in the, let's say, mid 60s? When you're asleep, is it, let's say, mid 40s to mid 50s?
It was.
So you can actually look at that. Yeah. And I would say, this is really interesting because I've worked with Olympians, I've worked with athletes in every single league. And I will tell you, the best athletes in the world are also the ones that recover the best.
Yes.
Because of the demand on their body. Some of the best athletes that you will have never seen because they were injury prone.
Yep.
And that's because they weren't recovering as well. They were pushing their body
I
hard.
never got injured. In 8 years professionally, I was on the DL once and it was a freak injury. A guy stepped on my hand and broke it.
And that can happen, right? Tom Brady, I'm from Boston. Yep. So he had a guy collide with his knee, right?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with a pulled hamstring or constantly having. And I'd see those guys. I'm like, why are you always hurt? Like, do you not stretch? Do you not have enough muscle? Like, how is this guy so injury
or too much for their frame, right? It'd be like you at 200 when you were playing ball.
Yeah.
Like you might have done too much to put on too much muscle. And then when you were swinging, you were always hurting your lower back or like it was just too much. So that just
goes with not understanding your body.
That's right. Because over time, like if you gave yourself 4 years to put on 5 pounds per year, you could have got to 200.
Yeah.
But you have to do it so that your body adapts. And that's just a beautiful way to look at it because all of us, myself included, we want to accomplish all of our goals within the next, maybe we give ourselves 90 days. That's it, like maximum.
Every
right?
quarter.
That's it. But if we look at it as like, because we do a lot of biological age testing now. Okay. So there's health span. That's how many years of your life will you live healthily? And then there's lifespan. How long do you live? So the average American lives 74 years for men to 77 years for women. It's not great. But unfortunately, they're unhealthy by the time they get into their mid 40s.
Yeah.
So they're on
the last 30 years suck.
That's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
They're run down, they're tired. There's not even interest, right? In kind of getting back into life and getting after it. But when we look at the oldest people in the world, their health span, they were healthy till about 1 to 3 years before they actually died.
Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable. So someone in their 90s and beyond. So my goal is to help people increase their health span, not just their lifespan. And you can run a lab, which I'd love you to run, called a biological age test.
Okay.
And what it does, you said you're 34 years old.
Yep.
It'll tell you if you're 34 years old biologically as well. Not chronologically is the number of birthdays that you celebrate, right? Biological is how many years are on this body. And you can actually reduce that. So when I was at my worst, I had 2 clinics open. I was working 80 hours a week, 40 hours with patients, wellness clients, 40 hours managing my locations. We would see 20,000 plus appointments a year. And my biological age was about 18 years older than I was. It was terrible. I'm a doctor of naturopathy, not good. and so I said, all right, I need to really start taking this seriously. Yes, I love my work and all of this, but I need to find a little bit more balance. I need to do the right things. And so now I'm about 46 years old. My biological age is 32. And so what I was able to do is reduce the rate of aging. So before it was like 1.16, now it's 0.67. And so I fall between 0.67 and 0.71. What does that mean? It means that for every year, my body's aging 8 months. And so 4 months of the year, I'm not aged. So the body then can age slower.
What is it tracking to even come up with that number?
So there are 4 main lab tests out there, but they all look at the same thing, which is back in the day, we used to look at something called telomeres. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
Basically the ends of your DNA, they look like shoelaces.
Okay.
The little plastic tabs right there.
Yeah.
Over the years, those plastic tabs can wear away, right? And that's the fraying. So that's the telomeres. The stronger those tabs, the better the DNA replicates. All right, that's just one marker. Now they look at hundreds of thousands of methylation points, and they actually look at how well the DNA is replicating. So Dr. Steve Horvath, really fascinating guy, it's called the Horvath clock. It's clocks within the body to measure how quickly you're aging. A lot of it has to do with inflammation. And I know you had Gary Brecka on before, but methylation-based levels, that's just one part of it. But it's an interesting to look at the methyl markers, which is like one of the hardest things to explain. It's like functional medicine, right?
Yeah.
But methyl markers are basically just telling your DNA, because your cells turn over all the time, how to turn over properly. That's basically what it is. And it have the right expression of the DNA, not poor expression, which then leads to disease of the body.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's funny because, like you said, as you get older, you start feeling it better. And you don't feel better, but you start feeling the negative things you did better. And I was thinking about it right now. Yesterday, I played in the celebrity golf tournament here in Vegas for the Super Bowl. It was like these NFL guys and stuff. And dude, like I'm not out here normally drinking during the day, but I had maybe 5 drinks on the golf course. And today I do feel it. I worked out this morning and I still got it done. And I think that's a difference between disciplined people and not, right? Because today, no, I did not feel as good as normal, but I still just stay with my routine. I still woke up at 5. I still, got my workout in and everything else. And then, my head's a little more foggy today. It's a little heavier than it normally is. I could feel the alcohol affecting me.
It's also the self-awareness. I think as you get a little older, not everybody does.
Yeah.
And you become a little bit more introspective, or you start to get into this, integrative health thing, right? You start to track maybe your stats on an Oura Ring, because it's not even like the stats are all that important. You just start to get more in tune with your body. And it's really important, because then you start to catch things earlier. So I agree with you. I think you should stay in your routine. You should absolutely stay disciplined, but you don't want to then have 5 drinks on the golf course 5 days a week, right? And then continue to stick with it, just like you said. But if it's every once in a while, don't throw off your routine just because it's one day. Like, your body's strong enough, healthy enough that you can get away with that. And
as long as it doesn't become a habit.
That's right. Yeah. I don't think that you need to be perfect, nor should you be perfect all times of the day and every day. I also think it's important for your body to be able to do hard things and be able to overcome those hard things.
Yeah.
It's when you're exhausted then for the next day or two, you pushed it too hard. Like, your body's telling you, you are not properly recovering. And if you continue to do this, you're going to start to slide.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, that's an interesting thing, right? We're talking, you had mentioned it earlier, right? Like, your mental side affects your physiological side. And this is a good question, right? Because we're talking a lot about physical things with sleep and food and workouts and everything. But which side do you think is actually more important?
Nothing can overcome a mental-based deficiency. Yes. I have helped. So we've literally seen, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people in our practice. One-on-one, like in person, we've seen over 250,000 people. The only people that could not get well are the ones who could not disassociate from their disease. Meaning that if you've been suffering from, let's say, IBS, IBD, or an autoimmune issue, and you believe that to be a part of who you are, how do you overcome that? You always relapse. And so that was the hardest thing, is really understanding that with people, that when I created the de-stress protocol, stress, emotional balance, and success mindset, I knew a lot of it had to be mindset based.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, those same people, if they didn't get the B vitamins or the exercise, we still know today that an exercise routine beats the placebo and antidepressants in every head-to-head study. So like, that is scientifically, clinically proven, yet we don't give that as a prescription. And so what I think we need to do is work from a bodily side to improve the mindset, but then a mindset to improve the body. And I say this because discipline is something that you can learn, and you can start to just get small wins along the way.
Yeah. But
what I used to do, which was incorrect in my practice. So well over a decade ago, we start doing functional medicine. We run all these labs, and I would give people a 30-page booklet. And I thought I was doing the right thing. It was everything they needed. Stuff. Yeah, everything. Like, it was like literally everything they needed. And it wasn't that it was incorrect. It was incorrect because it was too much.
Yeah.
And so now we start with 2 to 3 things that are manageable, that if you follow them, you'll feel a difference within 21 days. And then it's a small win for you. It's a small win for us. You start to believe in what we're doing a little bit more, and we then take it to that next level.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to, you have time, right? You've got time. And like at 34, or even if you're 54, we've got our oldest wellness clients, 105 years old in our practice.
Geez.
Yeah. And so we're always saying, we don't need to do this today. Let's get on the right path, do the right things, and you accumulate benefits over time. It's just like being an athlete as well. You learn the fundamentals. You continue to practice. You need to get in your 10,000 hours though. Like, you need to get in your literally reps in order for it to become natural.
Yeah. Nothing can overcome just a lack of experience. You have to put in the right reps.
That's correct.
But I think it's interesting because as I've thought about this more and more, right? Because you're coaching people and training people on improving their health and their body. And I've had to do it in business and real estate and other things. And like, to me, it's just so abundantly clear that it always starts with mindset first.
Yes.
Because it's like, if you can't even make the decision to now do this hard thing, because, starting a business is hard. Taking care of your body is hard. Making a change is always hard. Then you just don't do it. So right. It's like, it always ends up starting with mindset. And I was thinking, as we've been talking, just self-reflection, that, okay, maybe I'm not the best sleeper right now. And then I was like, okay, but holistically, if you took everything up, but like, where do I stand? And I was like, all right, well, my diet's good. I never miss workouts. But I would say that my 2 biggest things that are probably 10 out of 10, let's say my diet's like an 8. because I still eat gushers and sweets and stuff. Yeah. And then, you know, my workouts, like I lift great weights, but dude, I don't do cardio. I don't do any of the stuff that get my heart rate up. Like I just like freaking lifting heavy weights.
Yes.
So let's say those are 8s. And then let's say my sleep's like a 7 or a 6. But I think the things that are actually 10 out of 10 would be the mental and the faith side, where every morning for the last, you know, almost decade, you know, I've been spending an hour with God. I leave the office by 5 o'clock and I go spend time with my family. And I do just truly like let everything go.
Yeah.
On the weekends, I don't come to the office. I don't work. I just chill.
Yeah.
And like really just, I don't know what you would call it, but de-stress and just enjoy life and time. I go golf. I enjoy my life. Like I don't make it all about this. Like I don't need to be 100% on business. I don't need to be 100% on my diet, like we're saying. So if I were to get, I would say those are 10 out of 10s. And I think those have allowed me to overcome the problems when business has all the issues it has or, you know, any other things.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, the two biggest ones for entrepreneurs in general are sleep and stress. So, you know, it sounds like you're managing stress really well.
Yeah.
And so the last part is sleep. And that always seems to be a tough one because, you know, you're trading time when you could be working or doing something you love in bed. And most people are like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Right. But you don't want to hurry that process. Right. And so what you're looking to do is to find that balance. And it sounds like you might be able to make that switch really well. Your schedule is a lot like mine is now. I end cap my day with the workout, and I do that because that just helps me shift. Like that's a mindset shift, is like, okay, all the stress of the day, I'm going to blow off right now with a great workout. And my daughters might even join me. I built a home gym now in the gym, but like that's the transition period. And then it's family time. Like that's what it is. And you have a 3-2-1 routine basically for sleep. It's 3 hours before bed, no eating. 2 hours before bed, try not to consume a lot of liquids so you're not waking up during the night. And then 1 hour before bed, no blue light, no laptops, no work, no emails, anything like that. And that's your downtime. And if you can do that, you'll find yourself move into that deep sleep a lot faster. Put on blue light blocking glasses, or, you know, get some amber lights in your house. All of these things help you make the shift, which then whatever time you do have for sleep, it's going to at least be better quality sleep.
Right.
And then when you wake up an hour with God, it's fantastic. Don't jump out, don't get fired out of that cannon right away. Like ease into the morning just a bit. And then that's going to be super helpful. Like don't have the cup of coffee right when you wake up. Get your norepinephrine, your heart rate flying, your cortisol pumping. Your cortisol already raises and rises between 6 and 8 a.m. Like
how long should you take?
I typically like people, if they're going to have breakfast, I like their coffee after breakfast. It blunts the cortisol effect and enables them to still get the energy, help with digestion, but not have that big spike. But if not, wait an hour and a half minimum.
That's a long time.
It is.
So what do you do during that time? But
hydrate instead. So get ready for your day or pray or whatever it is your morning routine is.
Okay, so I do that. Yeah. Okay.
And then hydrate. So simplest thing is, you can take electrolytes, nothing wrong with that. Squeeze a whole lime or a whole lemon in a tall glass of water with a pinch of sea salt. So that's a natural Gatorade. That is sodium from the sea salt and potassium from like a lemon. And that's going to help hydrate the body. So most people, they don't consume water during the night. So we got about 8 hours, a couple hours before bed, 10 hours. So you've gone at least 10 hours or so typically without hydrating your body. So better to start with some hydration, some water before you just dive into coffee.
So, okay, if I wake up at 5, I wake up, go to the bathroom, get ready, you know, I work out after I spend my time with God. So I don't like get fully ready for the day. I just, you know, get some clothes on, whatever. But let's just say by the time I sit down and get started, it's like 5:20. So I've been up for like 20 minutes. And then I'll usually have a Greek yogurt and a piece of fruit while I read and do my stuff. And then I'll have a double shot espresso with all of that. So I guess my question, because then this is what happens at about 6:15, 6:30, I then walk downstairs to my gym and I work out from 6:30 to 7:30.
Yeah.
So how would I make all of that, I guess, better?
Well, one, is it digesting well with you? It probably is, right? Because you're pretty in tune with your body. So if we say Greek yogurt for you, the fruit that you may have, the espresso, it could be totally fine. Are you having any water with that though?
Yeah. Okay. I drink a lot of water.
Got it. So you're hydrating the body, which is absolutely what it needs. The sea salt and the potassium just helps to absorb that better. That's all tissue wise. And then I don't have an issue. So if we look at a double espresso, so a typical coffee is 140 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
A small Starbucks coffee is 272. Like they're not all created equal, right? That's an enormous amount of caffeine.
Yeah.
It's like jet fuel. A double espresso, it's every shot of espresso is about 70 to 77 milligrams of caffeine.
Okay.
So in a double espresso, it's about one coffee. So like nothing wrong with that. The way that I would say, I have no idea if that's right or wrong for you. We would actually run what's called a stress mood metabolism test. It runs your cortisol levels throughout the day. So I would say when you wake up in the morning, you're going to actually spit into a tube of saliva. We're going to find your free testosterone levels, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, cortisol over 24 hours, your thyroid levels, which is really important because that's part of your metabolism. So people with dry skin, cold hands, cold feet, thinning hair, low mood, brain fog, weight gain, they often have lower thyroid. So we'd actually look at your thyroid. We'd look at your vitamin D levels. We'd look at your morning insulin. So we're seeing if we're spiking insulin first thing in the morning, and your hemoglobin A1C, which is an indicator for blood sugar. So then we would say, oh yeah, Ryan's espresso in the morning, no big deal.
Okay.
But someone else, like, oh, huge cortisol spike.
It's like you're saying, it's all personalized.
That if you can do that, then there's never any guesswork. Because for me, coffee and empty stomach, heart rate's flying, like it's too much.
It's not good for you.
But for you, yeah, your heart rate might, like if you, again, you can track this with your heart rate monitor. If your heart rate doesn't go up more than like 5 to 8 beats per minute, meaning like that would be a lot. Like if you're, let's just say your baseline heart rate is low 60s.
Yeah.
If you drink coffee and it goes to low 70s, you just spiked cortisol, norepinephrine, and your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight. You can see your heart rate's jacked up now. And the other thing is we would actually look at blood sugar. And so some people, they'll fast, right? They won't eat, but they'll take in caffeine. And for them, they might think they're in a fasted state, but they're not, because caffeine can actually spike blood sugar. So caffeine puts you in, for many people, a state of fight or flight that raises norepinephrine and cortisol. Cortisol is what's called a glucocorticoid. What that means is that it's going to break down liver glycogen stores or muscle glycogen stores to bring sugar into your bloodstream so you can use that because you're in fight or flight. And so you're not even in a fasted state anymore by some people drinking caffeine.
Yeah.
And so you can test that right at home with just a simple finger stick, like a glucometer. And after your coffee, let's just say it's in a fasted state. Let's say your blood sugar was 85. If it goes to 125 after a double espresso, you're no longer in that fasted state. Like that's really pushing your physiology.
Makes sense. Yeah. Like I can even think right now, since I'm basically joining the 90% because I'm like, dude, I'm tired, man, from yesterday, just being out in the sun all day and doing this golf thing. And it's not like I don't golf, but, doing it with a bunch of drinks and all this stuff and still putting the same amount of work and stress on my body afterwards. Like even today, I'm like, all right, I can get through the day and still do really well without like a pick me up. Right. Yes. But I'm already thinking, I'm like, I might need some extra coffee today because, I don't feel that great.
And that's the compensatory pattern.
Yeah.
Fine today. If that starts to happen multiple times per week. So I have this thing called the rain barrel effect. It's like, all right, starting to feel a little groggy today, a little bit of lower mood, lower energy. Those are the symptoms, right? And then you start to feel, a little bit more sore after my workouts than usual. It's taking me a little longer to recover. I'm waking up throughout the nights. A little bit more joint pain. Those are all those symptoms of the rain barrel, basically. And then what happens? Well, years later, all of a sudden you're like, I've got an autoimmune issue. How did that happen? It came out of the blue? No, it didn't come out of the blue. Your body was sharing with you signs, nothing major, but these are the underlying symptoms. And then, yes, the body can't compensate anymore. And that rain barrel overflows, we get diagnosed with the disease.
And I think that's the important thing that everyone needs to start doing is to notice the little things as they pop up. Because I've always done that in my entire career. Like, for example, right now, my elbow's been a little sore lately. Like, it shouldn't be sore,
right?
And it's been sore from golf. Like, I've been practicing every night trying to get better.
Yep.
And I'm just like, man, either I need to practice less, take some time off and let it heal, because it's clearly not healing with me continuing to play. Maybe there's a flaw in my swing. Maybe there's a workout I should be doing to strengthen that muscle, but clearly I need to adapt and do something, and I cannot just let it remain because it will just get worse.
That's right. And so these things, obviously, as an athlete, you get overuse injuries.
Yes.
And the problem with overuse injuries is that you are, let's just say you're right-handed. You're swinging the club in one way 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that, what are you doing? Well, you're overstretching certain muscles. Other muscles are becoming tighter. Your forearm flexors are getting tighter on this specific hand, but maybe the extensors are getting weaker.
Yeah.
And so then you go to a great, exercise physiologist, trainer, et cetera, and they're like, all right, we need to help balance this particular area. In the short term, we could do icing, we could do compression, right? The whole Rice formula there. And that's great. But just as you said, if you keep compounding inflammation and wear and tear on that, it's going to get worse and worse.
Yep. And it's an easy thing with your body because as long as you have some self-awareness, like you shouldn't have pain. That's my opinion. You start feeling your back is sore. I'll get guys who are like, dude, yeah, like I just have back problems. I'm like, you don't need to have back problems, right? Like you could fix it. You're going to have to just like, depending on how long you've been dealing with this is going to determine how long it's going to take.
Yes.
But you could have avoided surgery. You could have avoided these drastic measures had you just fixed the root cause from the beginning.
That's why we are not a big fan of pharmaceuticals. Well, we don't recommend pharmaceuticals because we're not medical doctors. But if needed for life-saving conditions, absolutely appropriate. Totally agree with that. But the thing is this, let's say with your elbow or injury, this could be high cholesterol, taking statins or whatever it is. Yeah. With your elbow, you could just take non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs.
Yeah, I'll just take ibuprofen.
That's it. And you'd be like, oh, my elbow's fine. Yeah. No, it's not fine. And it's actually not getting better. You're making it worse by playing on it and pretending that there's no pain.
Yeah.
And so in the long run, you're doing enormous harm to the inside of the body and you're masking the symptoms with pharmaceutical drugs. So we actually like the symptoms. Now, we don't want people to suffer, that's for sure, but the symptoms are an indicator, are we on the right path? So if you don't take any anti-inflammatories, if you don't have pain for a few days, you're on the right path.
Exactly.
Right? Oh, the pain's starting to come back. What am I doing? And it doesn't seem to be with my short game. It only seems to be with my drive. Am I overcompensating? Am I overswinging? Am I gripping the club too tight on the way down? Like it's like all these different things that it could be that you'll be able to figure out if you don't mask those symptoms.
Yep. No, 100% agree. And like I said, it becomes number one, knowing when you have like a new pain. Mm-hmm. And then number two, realizing that no pain, you don't have to have pain. People think that that's like a thing, and I don't know why. We're like, no, well, I just, I'm just tired all the time. Like that's life. That's
blaming it on age too is another thing. Like,
yeah,
I'm just getting older. This is just what happens. No, it's not what happens.
No, it's not. You can stop it.
Right. That's not what's supposed to happen. The body is not supposed to break down in this systematic fashion once you get to 40 years old or whatever the age is. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, yes, with a competitive athlete that's been doing the same thing since they were 10 years old, and they get to 35, 40 years old, it's a different story. You can wear out the body, like you can wear out the machine, but normal, humans,
peasants,
yes, normal peasants like myself, like these things are not supposed to happen. Yeah. And so what we want to do is we want to look for these things right in the beginning, or when you start to realize like, oh yeah, this is a repeated pattern that I seem to be going through.
Yeah.
I was just actually talking with a wellness client of mine, because I like to share too, meaning like you're healthy and let's say you fix the elbow, you fix the things, you're good. But in 6 months from now, something else could pop up. Like the human body's not static.
No.
And just because something pops up doesn't mean you're not healthy, right? Like I still get sick a couple times a year. Doesn't mean I'm not healthy. It means I was exposed to a virus that my body wasn't used to seeing. And so it mounted an actual healing response, which might've been a fever. It might've been upper respiratory issues. And that's just me fighting the virus. Oh, and now my body's exposed to it. Now I'm healthy again. And so these things are all normal. But what happens is every like couple of weeks, I start to get this thing. And once that thing continues to appear, you need to work on it. You need to figure out what it is and not just mask it.
Yeah. If I could just leave anybody with that thought, it's just like, look, write down what you're feeling, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, and just realize they don't have to be there. Like you can fix those things. And the answer is not drugs. The answer is, hey, something causes this. Let's figure out what causes this. And typically, and you brought up a good point. It's weird because, if you're to look at the spectrum of being ultra healthy and ultra unhealthy, it's like, it's not a gradual line to being unhealthy. It's like, okay, one little thing starts messing up, and then that compounds to cause 4 other things to mess up. And then another thing, that causes your lymph nodes and this, and it's like, boom, it like all just compounds on itself so fast.
Yes.
Versus like, it's just not one at a time.
No, your body can only compensate for so long. So we always tell people there's 2 ways that you become unwell. There are deficiencies and there are toxicities. So toxicities are what we accumulate over time. Toxicities could be high levels of estrogen in men or women. It could be high level toxicities might be like plastics in the body, parabens, heavy metals like the mercury that we talked about, the aluminum, the mercury is so pervasive in the environment. And the deficiencies would be your vitamins, your minerals, your omegas, your amino acids, normal levels of hormones, all of those things. But the problem is, the deeper that we get into dysfunction, the more you feel like you're falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
Like there is a point that rain barrel does overflow or you fall off the cliff. And the problem is, you can still get well, but you want immediate fix at that point, and that's the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, because you're so far away, so far gone.
And the pharmaceuticals, I'm not going to lie, like when I had Addison's disease, I was 19 years old is when they finally diagnosed us after going to 24 different of the best doctors in Boston, is when you get put on the medication, like they gave me cortisol, right? So now I eat cortisol again. I'm like, oh, I'm healed. I feel great.
Yeah.
But my body wasn't producing it. My pituitary gland was not telling my adrenals to produce cortisol.
Yeah.
And then I was taking a pharmaceutical called Florinef, which raised my blood pressure. Now I wasn't feeling weak and lightheaded when I stood up. So these things, though, give you the false sense of security that you are now well when you're not.
Yeah.
And if I went on that path, people don't typically live past their mid-50s. With Addison's disease and a lot of these issues. So it just shows you that the drugs, sure, they're giving you a sense that you are better, but they are masking everything that caused that. And my job is just to share with people, there's always an underlying root cause. You can always figure it out. It's not necessarily hard work, but you're going to have to just change a couple of the things that unfortunately got you to where you are today. And then a lot of people feel guilty. They're like, I was doing the wrong thing. I didn't know it. Well, yeah, we all don't know what we know until we're taught it, right? Until we learn it. So it's a gradual process of also learning in business, right? You start off, no one's typically ever successful right out of the gates, right? Yeah. So when you try a new diet, you're probably going to fail. Like it's probably not going to work for you the first time. But if it's more calibrated towards you and you understand that it's truly a journey and not a one-stop shop, you're willing to make the tweaks along the way.
Yeah.
And even in private practice. So we speak with people once a month and then we do weekly check-ins. And the reason is that when you get put on a plan, this plan works for 90+% of people. But let's say it's not working exactly for you. We also know all the reasons it doesn't work. Right? Because of certain food sensitivities, sensitivity to certain herbs. You don't do well in, let's say like hot saunas, because we do a lot of like healthy biohacking. Mm-hmm. So we say, okay, well, 20 minutes at 180 degrees doesn't work for you for a sauna, but what about 140 degrees for 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Could you do that to start to sweat out a lot of these heavy metals? They're like, I don't know. Okay, well, let's try it. Doesn't always have to be at the pinnacle. Let's start here, get some wins and begin to build up from there.
I want to talk to you about the sauna a sec, but before I do that, it just, once again, you gave me this epiphany that I've kind of talked about, with the whole concept of the wealthy way of that, in order for you to be, live a truly great life, you got to have everything firing on all cylinders, your faith, your finances, your health, your relationships. If any one of those is a problem, no matter how successful you are in the other ones, like it'll bring you down. And it just made me realize you're like, the drugs mask the pain. Mm-hmm. And then, you still have the symptom. And I was thinking about that with business and entrepreneurs. I'm like, these guys have so much business success. It masks the pain. Money masks the pain that's actually in their lives. They have these undiagnosed marriage problems or daddy issues or, like they're just trying to mask the pain through work.
Yes. And I've worked with multiple billionaires and they're amazing people. They were actually the most generous people I've met. But when it came to the stress side and the sleep and what they had to do to get to where they are, took a tremendous toll on the body.
Yeah.
And so the first half of their life, making money, creating the business of their dreams. The second half, though, is really dedicated to trying to get back their health.
Yeah.
And so if any of us can find a way along the way to keep our health, we get to enjoy it for that much longer, because it doesn't matter how many millions or billions you have if you ultimately don't get to enjoy your life.
Yep.
You've created it as, I want a trophy. Great. But what did that trophy cost you? Right? Like that's it. And don't get me wrong, they lived fantastic lives. They're living fantastic lives. They're alive right now. But so much of it now is not worrying about finances, but worrying about their health.
Yeah. I had Tim Grover in here the other week, and we were talking about just Michael Jordan, right? Mm-hmm. You know, there was obviously a cost to be, you know, who he was. And I asked him, I go, hey, you know, now that we have the benefit of hindsight with Jordan's career, I don't know Michael myself, but I have people who have played golf with him, who know him, who have told me things. And from what I hear behind the scenes, he's paying the price in terms of, I mean, just if you look at him, his health looks terrible. His eyes are yellow, you know, from what I'm told.
I saw that during the documentary.
Yeah. I mean, dude's drinking a ton every day, you know, kind of like, in my opinion, without purpose now, just trying to compete and play golf and other things to like fill the void. You know, he had a divorce. Like, you're starting to see the things happen now in his life that are paying the price. And look, I don't know the guy, and what, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but from the outside looking in, I mean, I wouldn't trade lives with him. I'll tell you that. And you just start to see this stuff and you're like, huh, you know, basically what I asked him was, I was like, do you think he would say it was worth it? And he's like, I can't answer that.
I look at that because, again, I've worked with professional athletes while they're an athlete and then post. And it's what I equate it to. I've never sold a large company. I equate it to a founder selling a large company. Yeah. So they have a huge exit. Let's say it's $100 million. Yeah. But it doesn't be the 100 million, but let's just say top of their game, right? You lose your sense of purpose for a while. I almost don't know any founder who sold and didn't go in this soul-seeking mission, whether it was through psychedelics or just like
trying to figure out life. Yeah.
Right. That's right. Because all of their identity, that's what I was talking about with disease earlier. The identity is wrapped up in this one thing, and you need to become a different version of you. And hopefully then you have new growth, you have new passion. Michael Jordan has this business, all of that. But I think that the best athletes in the world have a competitive side to them. And unless they can compete then for the rest of their life, they lose that drive.
Yeah.
And also, when as I forget, what was the boxer, you probably remember him. It's difficult to wake up at 5 a.m. and run when you're sleeping on silk sheets, right? There's a famous boxer who said that. Yeah. And sometimes when you have made it, it is difficult. Like, well, what's the point? Why am I going to continue on?
Yeah.
And so you do drop into sometimes despair, which leads to alcohol or smoking or whatever it might be. And unfortunately that does a number, not in the moment, but over the years by creating oxidative stress on your body. And that just wears you down.
And I was talking to Cardone about this last week when he was here. And he's like, yeah, dude, it gets harder as you get older and you have more success. You don't like have to put in the work. Like it is harder to fight complacency and all of that. So it is definitely true. But I mean, like even with him, he's a guy who's in great shape at 60, whatever he is, right? Yeah. Much better shape than Michael Jordan, you know, if not the greatest athlete of all time. How is this business dude in better shape than the GOAT? That's crazy to me thinking about that. Like, it's absolutely absurd to me that that's a thing.
And the thing is too, so Grant invests a lot of money into his health.
Yeah.
And he's able to, which is amazing. He probably has...
Jordan could too.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. So Grant maybe has $250,000 of like equipment in his house, but you don't need that, right? But you can still do your sauna, which might cost a couple $100, or a nicer one, a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan could invest $2 million a year if he wanted to, like LeBron's program.
Yep.
Right. And just like, no, you don't need to play basketball anymore. But now you want to be able to enjoy everything that you sacrificed in your life for the next, I don't know how old Jordan is, but for the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I don't know. I don't know Michael at all, but I look at these greatest of all time and I want them to stay around for a while. I want them to share their knowledge.
And I will say, you know, obviously Kobe's not here anymore, but you could tell that Kobe was still motivated. He was taking care of himself. I mean, he had purpose with his daughters, with his animations and all the stuff that he was already preparing to go. But like the dude had a plan.
Yeah. He was amazing. It's really unfortunate. And that's why we don't know. And that's why, like, take your health seriously, but also enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't take it so seriously.
Tomorrow's
that it's
not
stressful.
guaranteed.
Not for any of us. I look at, I've met Kobe before. I met Alex Rodriguez before. Alex, tremendous career. Say what you want about PDs, all those different types of things. But he is now a highly successful investor, like has a business, has a plan, has drive. And so I think all of us, no matter where we are in life, we need a mission. Like, we need a core of who we are. We need to know who we are, what we want, so that if we do have an exit, or we do have financial success, or we do have health, we do have whatever, even like I have 2 daughters, they're 9 and 11. Well, when my life and my wife's life is like, we need to make sure that they come first. Like with everything. That's why I stop work when I do all the different things. But when they're out of the house, then life is a little bit different. Like, what's that going to be like? Am I going to work harder? Am I going to do more? Am I going to take up more hobbies? Like, I won't have as much time necessarily dedicated right to them. So I always say, look at the phase of life that you're in right now. Enjoy that time, work towards it, but have an overall arching mission of your life. For me, it's, I didn't find out about how to heal for 10 years till I was 27 years old. So for me, it's easy. Like, I do a podcast every day. I wake up. One thing is to teach. I could have opened a dozen different wellness centers, franchised, do all those things, but that wasn't the core mission of who I am. So it's very easy for me to say, no matter how many people we reach each and every day, I record a show, I teach, and there's not this elitist level to it, right? Because you could pay thousands of dollars in your health, but you can also get so much for free. And free is always the best way to get started. Same with business.
Yeah, and I think a mission is a great thing to think about. And even for people listening, I want them to know, you don't have to know your mission as of this very moment. You know, I think over the years, my mission has changed, and I'm sure yours has too, as new opportunities and new, life changes have dictated it. And it's like, yeah, my mission was to get to the big leagues for a long time, and it didn't happen. And then my mission was to become a great real estate investor and do that. And then, as time went on, you have kids and you're married, and you're like, man, my mission's to be an amazing dad and everything. And then, at this very moment of my life, it's like, all right, having achieved a lot of different things now, I feel like God's calling me to bring the kingdom to the marketplace. And so, I just think about this and I'm like, okay, what really drives me at this point? Yeah, I could go flip 100 more houses. It will not fulfill me one bit. If this podcast goes viral, I literally won't care one way or the other. But when I do things that, help entrepreneurs see that, look, as a guy who has money and health and fame, and the things that, you don't have and you want to have, I can still tell you there's something else missing, even with all that. And, that's become my mission. And I don't know how long it will be my mission, but as of this moment, that's the mission. And so I think that people need to realize you don't need this massive mission
for sure
right off the bat. It can be a very selfish mission right now. Dude, if you're having struggle paying your bills, your mission, don't even be thinking about the rest of the world right now.
100%.
Think about, dude, I got to pick it up and be a provider for my family.
Yes. We all go through an evolution too. Like, that's the thing, is like, you evolved from athlete, which I'm sure gave you confidence, to then go out at a young age. And I know your story, to take a chance on yourself, to say, I'm going to put this on credit cards. I'm going to start flipping houses. Like, that's crazy. I did the same thing, but but you had to have confidence from somewhere, like that little spark. And then you say, okay, now I've made a little bit of money. Now I'm going to up level my studio, whatever it might be. And now I have a greater audience. And now what really is a big passion of mine, let's say, is your faith. And now you're able to share that. But it was an evolution of you that enabled that and allowed that. And so for me, nobody would have listened to my podcast had I not worked with, let's say, 250,000 people and was able to help people along the way. And I wouldn't have got there unless at 18 years old, I became a personal trainer, nutritionist, started working at local gyms, and then started building up a little bit of a following.
Track record. I mean, why would anyone listen to anyone? I tell people this all the time. I'm like, should I get into social media? I'm like, why would I listen to you?
Yes.
I'm like, you want to talk about business? You don't know anything. Why would anyone listen to you? And it's not like disrespectful. It's just like you just said, you have to build your track record and your experience to give you the authority to whatever, talk about the thing you're about to go do, to go launch the mission you're about to have. I can't say, hey, I want to go bring the kingdom to the marketplace, and I'm some bum business owner. Like, they're not going to listen to me. They're like, bro, I'm like, guys, Jesus is important. Like, I can tell you the money and the stuff, it's not as big as important as you think, but I'm broke.
Right.
Nobody's going to listen. They're like, bro, I ain't listening to you. You don't have the authority to say that.
No, and it's actually, so you can learn a lot in school. There's no doubt about that. But your formal education in school will never replace what you learn in the workplace or like an internship for me. So I have the education, but I learn the most from mentors. I was in China at a traditional Chinese medicine hospital. I was in India in Ayurvedic-based clinics. In Europe, I was in functional medicine clinics. The US, I've studied bioregulatory medicine, all sorts of different things. I learned more from a practice and being mentored than I ever learned from a textbook. Books are very easy to read, but how do you apply that is what really matters. And it's also all of the losses. I don't look at them as losses, I look at them as learnings, but it's all of the learnings along the way that would actually give you the authority to actually be able to help people in the first place. Because they're going to ask you questions, right? And they say, this is where I am. This is what happened. You're like, oh yeah, I was there too.
Exactly.
But if you've never been there, how do you actually help people?
Yeah.
And
well, maybe you should do this. I don't know though.
You have no idea. You're just regurgitating what Ryan says or someone says, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, learn it for yourself. And it's also what makes you unique. Because my specific voice is not trying to be like anybody else. It's like, this is the story. This is what I went through. This is what I've learned along the way. This is what I've studied. These are the people that I've helped. This is what I know to be the truth. Other people can have a different truth, and that can be true as well.
Yeah.
But this is what I know to be the truth of like what works.
Yeah.
And then you feel passionate about sharing that with people. And then you never lose that fire because it is your truth. But if you never develop that in the first place, there's no fire. You're just trying to game the algorithm. Just like you said, I do a podcast every day. I don't care if it goes viral, just like you. I probably should name it in a specific way, but it's like, this is who it's intended to help. This is the particular topic. This is the struggle they're having. Here's how to overcome it. And it will most likely reach a person out there who needs that information.
Yeah.
And if you just show up consistently,
it compounds.
It compounds, exactly.
Yeah.
Same with health.
Yep.
You show up every day. You won't be perfect, but it compounds over time.
So you mentioned the sauna a few times, and I actually just got a sauna. I got a sauna and a hyperbaric chamber.
Nice.
And I've been using the sauna as part of my morning routine now for maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, 2-3 weeks. And I sit in there for about 10 to 15 minutes at about 150. I think that's the max it goes to.
Is it an infrared sauna? Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's all I do. Like, I just don't know why. I like saunas. I always have.
Post-workout?
No, pre-workout.
Okay.
I'm anti cold plunging. We could talk about that too.
Yeah, happy to.
But why? I don't know. Why do I even need a sauna? I don't even know why I bought it.
So, and I would love to talk on this topic because sauna is one of the top things that you can do for anti-aging and health.
Okay.
Way more than cold plunge, way more than so many other things. And so, we'll put it this way. The research is really evident as to how it's helpful. So if you're in a dry sauna, which go up 180 degrees, 200 plus degrees, barrel saunas, you only need to be in there 19 minutes. There are massive studies over 3+ decades in Finland. So Finland is the home of the sauna. That's basically
I
where
didn't know that.
It's been around for thousands of years, literally hole in the ground, sheepskin, or I should say deer skin over the top, right? They had smoke lodges back then or sweat lodges. But sauna is a big thing, always has been in Finland. So they have these giant studies. What they found was that just 19 minutes, 4 to 5 times per week, so more days than not, reduced all-cause mortality by about 42%, all causes of dying. And it reduced cardiovascular disease, which is the number one cause of death, by 63%. It's an amazing statistic. So what it does, and let's just talk about infrared sauna for a second. So infrared sauna, it typically only goes up to 140 degrees. I got an infrared sauna recently. They have a new one that goes up to 170 degrees.
Yeah, mine's 150.
So 150 is great though, but an infrared sauna is different than a regular, we'll call it Finnish sauna or dry sauna, like you might see it like a spa.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you go in an infrared sauna, it heats you from the inside out rather than the ambient temperature, which is the outside in. So regular sauna, you might put the water on the coals, right? It steams up, you get really hot, you're sweaty. The infrared sauna might take you a little while to start sweating. And then what happens is you're pushing more of those metals out. So it's been clinically studied again, because they'll measure what's in the sweat. You'll see higher levels of mercury dispersed in an infrared sauna. So if you are someone that tests high on heavy metals, you want to do a heavy metal detox, but you also want to do infrared sauna. Now, the big basis though, let's say you don't have any toxins in your body. You're the only person in the world that
I have a lot of mercury, I think. I eat sushi.
Okay. So that's a big one we'd want to test, because there's nothing wrong per se with sushi, but we would stay to the lower mercury fish.
Got it.
Not the tuna, swordfish.
Oh man, I eat just a ton of tuna. Otoro, everything.
Amazing omega-3s and all those great things, but it comes at a price. And then it's the mercury.
You got to pay the price.
We got
absorbing all the mercury.
But there's salmon, there's mackerel, there's other things that you could get. So what the sauna does is help compensate for that though.
Okay.
And it creates something what are called heat shock proteins in the body. So a couple things happen. It helps to kill off old weak cells. That's an amazing thing. It improves inflammation levels. It pushes you out of the sympathetic fight or flight to more of the parasympathetic. We already talked about the detoxification. It improves DNA replication. So it's amazing as an anti-aging tool. My recommendation for you, infrared sauna is supposed to be more like 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, where a dry sauna is about 20 minutes. So if you can push that time, you can even do something while you're in the sauna, as well. You can do your stretching in there. Yeah. And I recommend it post-workout.
Okay.
So the body's already a little bit hot. You're in the sympathetic nervous system because you've just been lifting weights. Then you move into the sauna. It starts the recovery process.
Oh.
And it's actually really helpful. And a lot of infrared saunas have the chromatography, the lighting, and all the nice things that kind of go along with it too. So go in there. You can do dry brushing, which is great for the lymphatic system. You can stretch in there. You can make that your time with your faith. You could read and you can do whatever you want.
I've actually been doing that a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Just great use of your time.
Yep.
And it gives you the downtime to shift. Exactly. But you need the time in the infrared sauna. You really do need that 30 minutes if it's at a lower temperature. So the studies on that are 4 to 5 days a week. Okay. So it's as many days as possible. 2 to 3 is still amazing. There's about half the benefits, but you still get them. And if you can get to 4 to 5, it's fantastic.
All right. So I did buy the right thing. Okay, cool.
Yes.
So and I do like the sauna. I just didn't know why. I just like it.
Yeah.
So I'm getting rid of all my toxicity and my metals and stuff like that. Okay. What's up with the cold plunge? What do you think about it?
So I am not, it's one of those things. I'm not all in or all out on the cold plunge. Unlike
I'll tell you why I'm all out, but go on.
Okay. So the cold plunge is great at producing norepinephrine, adrenaline, dopamine, giving you that surge of get up and go. Not everybody needs that. Many people have already high levels of excitatory neurotransmitters like dopamine. That's me. I don't need to get cold motivated
plunge. Hopping in cold water.
Or cortisol. Like I'm already like trying to fight being shot out of a cannon. And so I don't need the excitatory stimulus of that. And I can get the anti-inflammatory benefits from a sauna. Now I will say, if you can get to the point where when you dip into a cold plunge and you use breath work, so specific resonance breathing or box breathing to calm your nervous system, and you can then move into a stressor and stay calm, it's actually highly beneficial. So there are benefits to it, but if you're not using it properly, you're just spiking that sympathetic nervous system. It can be a great anti-inflammatory. I'm not saying that, but unlike sauna, which is pretty much great for the entire world, I don't necessarily recommend cold plunge for everyone, especially beginners.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I don't like the cold plunge. So number one, I'm just not a fan of like icing in general. Like growing up in sports, right? To be like, ice your arm. It's good. It's good. And then like I'd ice my arm. I'm like, this feels worse, man. And we used to do ice baths and all that stuff. It makes you stiff and just whatever, right? Like I truly found that I was just better off doing a sauna and never icing and just stretching and like letting the blood flow better. Yeah. I'm not a doctor, but it just felt better.
Well, and there is actually evidence behind that, because if you are iced in an area, you're reducing inflammation. And oftentimes that inflammation is there to clean up tissue damage from a workout or from playing. So if you are reducing inflammation when the inflammation is supposed to be there to clean up an area, it's like taking a non-steroidal, right? Taking a ibuprofen. Yeah. You don't necessarily want to do that when you have back pain, like if it's an injury. And the reason is you want your body to heal on its own. And just like you said, the heat can actually help with that circulation. Yeah. But going from heat to cold to heat to cold, there is benefit, because you're basically with heat, you're bringing the heat in your body to the periphery, to the surface. With cold, you're pulling it back into the organs. There's a time and place for everything. I just think that you need to have way more protocols in place for cold plunge, and it can be beneficial, than for sauna. You can literally just get in the sauna. If you feel like you're overheating, get out of the sauna.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to, don't dive in at 30 minutes your first day. Do 10 minutes, work up to it. But I'll tell you right now, sauna is one of the number one things that you can have in your house. For sure.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I love my sauna. It's been doing great. I'll actually link to my sauna down below. It's from a company called Elevate that, they just make really good stuff. So I got my chamber from them and the sauna. But yeah, my other problem with cold plunge is that, number one, like you said, like they're like, dude, it just makes me feel fresh and ready to go. I'm like, I don't need that. I hop out of bed ready to go. Like, I don't need to jump in the cold water to, whatever. Like I did experiment like with cold showers before. I'm like, this is stupid. This does nothing for me. Like I'm the exact same.
No, but people with depression, it can be phenomenal. It really can. So like if someone is, and again, I'm not giving medical advice, but if someone's dealing with depression and seasonal affective disorder and they do a cold plunge, doesn't need to be 39 degrees. It can be literally 56 degrees is what the research shows. And you can learn to relax into it. And then you get this huge stimulus as well that can spark neurotransmitters like norepinephrine that can pull you out of that low spot. So that is one condition that we will actually recommend it.
That's interesting.
But it's the opposite, right? You're not depressed.
I don't have that.
You're not, you don't need to get up and go. And so that's why I always say you can enjoy coffee. I try to do a half decaf. Like I like coffee, but I just take back the caffeine. Like I don't need the caffeine.
I had a viral reel with that. I was like, my guy, I was taking a coffee here at the office. He just started filming me. I'm like, why are you filming me? He's like, dude, what's your take on coffee? I'm like, freaking great. And then all of a sudden I started talking about decaf. I was like, yeah, you know what though? I don't drink it for the caffeine. I drink it because I just like it. I would drink decaf like all day.
And if you can get a Swiss water processed, because regular decaffeinated coffee is nasty, the way that they use it, basically use like gasoline, like ethanol to decaffeinate it. But you can get it water processed. And the studies have shown, you still get the polyphenol antioxidant benefits from decaffeinated coffee. Still great for the brain, still great for the overall inflammation of the body and antioxidants. I mean,
I don't even drink it for that. I drink because it just tastes great.
Same with me, but I like to justify it saying that I'm getting a lot of antioxidants.
Yeah. So it's like, I bought the Ferrari because, it's got these cool new safety features. It's like, no, dude, you bought the Ferrari.
Yes.
But my last beef of cold plunging is just like, it's become this thing on social media where people like just kind of do it as like a badge of honor or like, dude, I do hard things.
Right.
And I'm like, no, you don't. Like you hopping in the cold plunge does not prove you do hard things or that you're like dedicated to anything. Like nobody gives a crap about it.
No. And honestly, like first there's cold plunge, but now if you're not breaking the ice on top of your cold plunge and getting in, you're not doing it right. So it's always taking it to that like highest level.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm like, well, are we now just going to go outside and drill a hole in the ice to show like how much more cold we can withstand? I don't know that has to be the goal, but I do understand that whatever is good, we take it to that nth level. Yeah. And that's natural health as well. Like then it becomes a bad thing.
I need to get the sun in my sauna. Like I just need to burn to death. That's the only way to do the sauna right.
Right. Well, there are people who literally take a bike into the sauna and just go all out. And I'm saying, no, like it's meant to actually rejuvenate the body, not to rev it back up again too.
Yeah, so, not to just try and kill yourself.
But that's what it seems like. A lot of like the healthy biohacking, or I like to say healthy biohacking, a lot of biohacking is, it seems to be the opposite of what it was intended to do.
Yeah.
To bring our bodies back into balance.
Yeah.
Now it's pushing our bodies so far out of balance to the extremes that you now need to do other biohacking things to pull yourself back in. And that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. I already envision it now. In about a year, all the cold plungers are going to be like, all right, that was cool then, but now there's this new thing. It's riding your bike in the sauna. Like it's like some other dumb thing. So, that's my take on that. But I will ask, what do you think about the hyperbaric chamber? Cause I've never even used it yet. I bought it. I was actually suggested it for my son who has special needs. And they were like, hey, it'd be great for him and his oxygen and everything else. I'm still like, I don't know if it does anything. I personally have never used it. So like, I don't know, but I bought it.
So I've spoken at Lyme disease conferences and a lot of other places that use a lot of hyperbaric. I've never used it in my practice, but that doesn't mean that I don't believe that it works.
Yeah.
It works. You just need so many sessions in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber to begin to really accumulate those effects.
Oh, really?
And it takes 60 minutes per session.
It's a long time.
So it's a long time commitment. Whereas, so again, I think it's highly beneficial. I think that there's clinical research to show the benefits, but I like to look at what can I give you that you'd be able to use on a near daily basis that would show you the greatest amount of benefits.
The sauna's the easiest too.
Sauna, exercise, steps.
Well, yeah.
So like for my team at my daughters leave for school around 7:30 in the morning or so. By 7:30, 7:45, I'm having my breakfast. By 8 o'clock, I do an hour walk, but I have 2 30-minute meetings. So I'm walking and talking during that time. But I'm getting my 10,000 steps. One of the best, it sounds so boring, but most health things are boring.
Yeah.
They really are. You just accumulate them. So if you get 8,500 to 10,000 steps per day, which is a little over an hour and a half of walking a day, and it can be split throughout the day, you reduce all-cause mortality again by about 26%. That's all reasons for dying you reduce.
Yeah. You
improve your cardiovascular system. It's a good complement to weight training. So I don't just walk, I walk and talk with my team. And so I'm doing those things. It's hard to make hyperbaric 4 to 5 times a week as part of your routine.
Yeah,
we use EWAT instead, which is exercise with oxygen therapy. You can hop on for 15 minutes to 20 minutes while you're doing cardio and get the benefits at the same time.
Oh yeah, I've seen people doing that. On the bike, they're wearing the mask. Okay. Yeah.
It's not full body saturation like the HBOTs, the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So again, if you can do it or you're recovering from something, 20, 30 sessions, it takes a while.
Whoa.
But you can get, it does take that many, honestly.
Dang.
Yeah, I know.
So I won't feel it after trying it once.
If you do, it's most likely placebo, but that's okay. Placebo works as well. And inside of it, you just have to just say, okay, well, what am I doing inside of this? Like I'm reading a book, I'm doing other things because you're in there for a while.
What I would say is, and basically what you're explaining is, look, entrepreneurs are busy people. You only have so many hours in a week and a day. And so you don't have 5 hours a day like an athlete to go dedicate towards health things. You can't practice. You can't, train. You can't sit there and get therapy and all these things that we do as athletes when that's your only job and career. We might only have an hour a day to truly dedicate to health. And so what are you going to do with it?
That's right. If you had 3 hours, HBOT would be part of that 3 hour routine. I agree. It's a fantastic thing. I'd be looking at red light, sauna, exercise, PMF mats, maybe EWAT. And they don't have to be every day. You could kind of rotate your schedule, but you've got your 2 to 3 hours to do that. But if not, just like you said, so I wake up earlier than my family for 1 hour before, I get ready, and that's my mindset time. That's the faith time. That's all of that. Then my girls are up, it's their time. And then they're at school. Okay, that's work time. End of the day, that is 1 hour. So I dedicate that to my health and recovery. So I consider the sauna, the PMF, the red light, that's recovery, but half of that time is the active output. And then I'll alternate that. And we could talk about cardio a little bit because I think that is something that you're going to want to add to your routine, even though we all hate it. Yeah. Because it's tremendous benefit, believe it or not. And then on the weekends, it is from Friday, let's say at whatever time I go pick up my daughters, to then Sunday night. Like that's their time. But that doesn't mean that my wife can't do the sauna. I can't do the sauna. We do some healthy things the weekends.
You and I have a very similar schedule and way that we see it. It seems that way. Very similar.
But it is so it's truly like little anchors. I've got a little time in the morning, a little time at lunch, and then a little time at the end of the day. Yeah. And so it's like, well, what am I going to do with that time? I just can't I can't fit in an HBOT. Like I just can't. On the weekend though, I could. Yeah. And so it's like, all right, I can get some time in there, but you got to multiply that. The cardio I wanted to mention to you though, so again, I was doing certified strength and conditioning specialist, personal trainer, all those fun things in my early 20s. And I would never recommend cardio because it doesn't help transform your body that much, right? Like hill walking, yes, like that can help with body fat, all these great things. But when you are looking to improve your overall health, balancing the anabolic side of weight training with zone 2 cardio, and you'll start to hear zone 2 a lot more. It's this boring level of cardio where your heart rate's about 60 to 70% of your max VO2. Just take your 220 minus your age, and that's basically your max, and you take 60 to 70% of that. So for you, it's going to be somewhere around 110 to 135 or so. Like that's where your heart rate remains. And it's steady state. It's all the things that we don't love to do. But that over time compounds health almost like none other. It drives oxygen to the tissues, helps you get better in terms of bringing oxygen to the mitochondria, because it's the exact opposite. When you're weight training, it's anaerobic. So it's pushing lactate threshold, it's not using oxygen. And the other half of that, so if you look at the yin yang symbol in Chinese medicine, one half's no oxygen, the other half's oxygen. And so the cardio actually helps with the oxygen. So it's one thing that I would say, try to start to ease into the routine.
So let's talk about like what that actually means. So the only cardio I've ever really done would be like incline walk on the treadmill. Is that zone 2?
Absolutely. That counts. It's one of the healthiest things that you can do.
Zone 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say incline walking is literally one of the healthiest and most overlooked aspects of exercise you can do.
I like incline walking. Like I'll watch movies and YouTube and just sit there and walk on my treadmill. I have one in my gym.
Yeah. And then just look at your heart rate monitor. So if you can get a Garmin, which is what I use, you can use an Apple Watch, you can use a Polar, whatever works for you.
Does Oura Ring do that?
Not in it's not great in real time. Yeah. And so it's just the further you get away from your heart, there's more noise.
How good is the treadmill at tracking when you grab the grips?
It literally, they've shown changes whether your hands are sweaty, conducting electricity because it's bioelectrical impedance, whether it's cold. So not all that great. Hard to keep it. Chest rate monitor is absolutely the best. But the thing is with a lot of these things, you don't need to do them every single time you exercise. Once you do them for a week, you know what your heart rate is. Yeah. And so like, okay, if I'm at a treadmill incline of 7, your heart rate's at 125, we'll say. If it's at a 15, it's at 140. It's actually a little too hard. Okay, let's take it back down. Now, when you start to feel that get easy, all right, put on the chest monitor again and see where you're at. And then you can start to incline it again. Yeah,
I'll usually do like 10 to 12 incline at like 3.5 to 4 speed.
That's real work. Yeah. I mean, I bet your heart rate's up in the 130s at that point. So that's excellent.
How long should I go?
30 to 40 minutes if you can.
How often?
Your weight training 2 to 3 days a week. Your cardio 2 to 3 days a week. Those are your minimums. You can do more.
I do weight training 4 days a week, but I could add cardio on the off days.
Yes. Or a little hill walk at the end. And then it doesn't need to be 30 to 40 minutes necessarily.
Oh, really? Like how long if I do it after a weightlifting session?
Well, let's say you could do some 20 to 20 minute. Yeah, 20 minutes you could do. Your body's already amped up a little bit from the weight training. Yeah. The cardio is going to be more of like the cool down. And what I say that is just not, it's using a different energy system of the body.
Okay.
So it's not using the anabolic creatine phosphate, the fast twitch muscle fibers. You're now moving into steady state, bringing the body back. You'd actually recover faster just with that great circulation from your cardio. And then you would have dedicated longer days. 30 to 40 minutes.
Got it.
But you don't need to go for hours at a time. I mean, unless you have a specific purpose that you're training for this thing.
Well, I just had the Iron Cowboy on, if you ever met him.
I haven't.
Okay, so he ran 50 triathlons in 50 states in 50 days.
That is
Then he ran 100 triathlons in a row in 100 days.
Wow.
So yeah, he trains for a whole different purpose.
That's impressive. The closest person that I've seen to that, I haven't met him yet, I'd love to meet him, is Nick Bear. Have you ever met Nick?
No.
So he has this thing called hybrid athlete, and he weight trains and he does cardio, and he's got his nutrition's on point, like all these things. Yeah. And it's tremendous on the body. But he goes through exactly what he does to try to recover all of these different things.
No, I'm going to add that to my routine. I can, that's feasible. 20 minutes, just knock it out. And I like incline walk. I just watch the TV and it's fine.
That's right. Little recovery time. And the thing is though, you won't feel the immediate benefits. But what you do, you will start to feel the recovery improve, and you'll start to feel less overall soreness and wear and tear on the body.
And I think that's why I've never done it, because I'm just like, yeah, I've done it. And I'm like, I don't see any point of why I do it.
Same with the sauna. Like that's the thing is that, but if you look at the research and you can trust the research, because now the research is decades old, you're going to get the benefits. With weight training, you can say, I'm going to dial this up. I'm going to try to add 3-4 pounds of lean tissue, whatever it is, and you can make that happen. With cardio, the best that you can do is doing the same distance, the same thing at a lower heart rate or a faster speed. Right. And that's why you don't always need to go longer, because it's just inevitable. Like you're going to get better, but do you need to keep going? You don't necessarily need to. Everything is oxidative stress in the body. So the biggest thing I would say to you is start to look, just as you get older and older, whatever you're putting out, you need to be then bringing back in. So like as hard as you go, you need to recover harder. If you don't go that hard, you don't need to recover that hard, right? And so that's how I look at it. It's always a balance, creating equilibrium in the body.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, dude, I've had a great time chatting and learning about this, man. So many takeaways I'm going to implement myself. And dude, It's been amazing having you on the show. Where can people find out how to work with you and more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so my main website is stephencabral.com, Stephen with a PH. You can find the at-home lab testing there, the podcast, The Cabral Concept. My book's called The Rain Barrel Effect. So people can just check me out there and on social media. It was a pleasure being on. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Guys, go check it out, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
To me, to show it to an extra 50,000 people that don't follow me, that's what I'm paying for. Because it's already being shown and shared amongst the people that do.
Yep.
And I pick up a little bit of here and there, but if I were to pay for it, well, then I'm going to go out and be exposed to a new audience.